Hi everyone, I'm Elisa with EECC Travels, and today I wanted to do a cruise tips video about Alaska. If you've watched this channel, you know that I go to Alaska every year. It is my favorite place in the world. There's no beauty like Alaskan beauty. I don't know what it is. The first time we went there, we took the kids for their 16th birthday and we just fell in love with Alaska. And still to this day, Cameron and Colby will tell you that that is their favorite trip ever. And it just keeps bringing me back year after year after year. So a lot of people will say Alaska is a bucket list trip for them. And if you haven't been to Alaska, please go. It is so beautiful and serene and just like no other place in the world. And today in this video, I wanted to talk about 3 different ways you can visit Alaska. So obviously we're cruisers, and a great way to see Alaska is by cruise. And this is the most popular way too, because every cruise line brings ships to Alaska for the Alaska season. When is the Alaska season? Well, some will start as early as April and some go as late as October. So for half of the year, you can cruise to Alaska if you want to. And within cruising to Alaska, there's a lot of different options, and we'll get into those in a minute. Option number 2 is just a land trip. So for instance, my sister is not a cruiser. How dare her? She's never been on a cruise before. So she wanted to go to Alaska this year, and we planned her a trip where she flew to Anchorage, and we planned a completely land-based trip from Anchorage up to Fairbanks. She got to go to Denali National Park. She did a lot, and it was all land-based, no cruise at all. Another thing, if you're an RVer like we are, that is like the ultimate thing to do, is to drive your RV to Alaska. But this is a huge time commitment here. We're talking 2 to 3 months minimum, because it takes a minute to get up there, it takes a minute to get back. So anyway, that's not gonna be for the average person. That's gonna be the retired folks or people like us who work remotely and can do that. But anyway, I digress. Another way to see Alaska, and this is probably my favorite, is a combination of a land and sea trip. So if you watched our most recent Alaska series where me and Sophia went to Alaska, that's what this was. Okay, let's start with the most popular way to visit Alaska, and that is on an Alaska cruise. And this is what the quintessential, I'm going to see Alaska. The funny thing is, because we are also RVers, I am in a group called Visit All 50 States, because that is a goal of a lot of people who are in RVs, but not just RVs. There's a lot of people in that group that are not RVers too. But a lot of people save Alaska for last, and they do it via Alaska Cruise. I've seen a lot of those posts this summer. So how do you go about doing this? Well, first off, like I said, just about every cruise line is going to send ships to Alaska for the season. So if you have your favorite cruise line and you want to stay familiar, that's great. Go with what you know. If you've never cruised before and this is your first cruise, I might recommend a couple of different cruise lines, and also look at the itineraries, because your standard itinerary that most cruise lines are going to visit is Ketchikan, Skagway, Juneau as your ports, and a glacier day. So Glacier Bay or Tracy Arm Glacier. There are permits involved there, and not all ships can go into all of the glaciers, so that's why you're gonna get usually one or the other. If you have I need to see Glacier Bay National Park, make sure you pick an itinerary that visits Glacier Bay. If you just wanna see glaciers and don't care, then that's cool. Pick any itinerary, because you're going to see glaciers no matter what. Now, talking about where you're going to cruise from, there are going to be a few cruises that are going to leave from San Francisco or other places in California, but for the most part, your cruises are going to leave from Seattle or Vancouver. These are 2 very different experiences. So let me kind of break it down a little bit. If you cruise from Seattle, this is going to be for people who do not have a passport and do not want to get a passport and just want to go on an Alaska cruise, and hey, I'm going to another state. I just want to, fly to a US port, sail to a US port and come back. This is where you're going to cruise from. From Seattle, you're going to get a ton of different options. Every major cruise line does sail from Seattle, and you're going to get primarily 7-day cruises, and these are going to visit, like I said, the 3 main ports of Alaska are Juneau, Skagway and Ketchikan. But if you cruise from Seattle, you're gonna make a short stop in Canada. Why? Because that's the law. If you cruise from a US port and you're returning to that same US port, you have to step foot on foreign soil. So every ship that sails from Seattle will make a stop, usually in Victoria, Canada. And you're like, great, I'm gonna get to see Canada. Maybe not really. So usually these stops are very, very short. When we have cruised from Seattle, these stops are usually from 8 p.m. to midnight. There's not a whole lot you can see and do at night in 4 hours. So we made the best of it. There was a shuttle that took us from the port into downtown Victoria, and we had a great night. But if you're wanting to see Canada, this is not the way to see Canada. You're gonna get a beaver tail, you're gonna get a couple of souvenirs, you're gonna walk down a main street, and that's about it. But you will have a official stop in Canada. Pros and cons of sailing from Seattle. Pros, you don't need a passport. So if you don't have one and you want to cruise to Alaska, that's your port. Easy peasy, you got it. There's also a lot to do in Seattle. Seattle is a very cool city. Now, the Seattle airport is not close to the cruise port. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm gonna go in a couple days in advance and, well, the hotels are cheaper at the airport, I'm just gonna stay at the airport. Don't do that. Please don't do that, because you're gonna spend a lot of time and a lot of money going from the Seattle airport to downtown, which is where the cruise port is. Spend the extra money, get a hotel in downtown Seattle, because everything is very, very walkable. There is a ton to do in downtown Seattle, and you can literally walk everywhere. We actually even did a repositioning cruise one time where Seattle was a stop. It wasn't like where we were cruising from. We actually stopped in Seattle for the day, and the ship docked right there in downtown. We literally walked off the ship, walked all around Seattle, had a fabulous time, and then just got back on the ship and sailed off. So Seattle is great, absolutely great for a couple of days in advance. There's so much to do there. For you coffee drinkers, the original Starbucks is there. We have stopped there. You have to stop at Pike Place Market and see the throwing fish, because that's really cool. And just, that's a neat market. It's a very old market. It's neat how it was built, because it's just very rambling. You're just kind of going from one stall to another and one floor to the next, and you don't really know where you're going, but it's really, really neat in there and very good food. And it's right there on Puget Sound, and you can there's just so much right there. I have one con of Seattle, and that is, if the Pacific Ocean is not being friendly that day, you may have rough seas. So when you sail from Seattle, you leave Puget Sound and you go into the open Pacific Ocean around Vancouver Island to get up into the Inside Passage of Alaska. That trek, I've been on a ship where it was pretty rough that day. And I'm not saying it's always gonna happen. It might not, but it can. So just be aware that if you sail from Seattle, you have a day in the open Pacific Ocean, and it can be rough. That's my only con. Other than that, Seattle's great. Vancouver is the other main port to sail from. Now, obviously, Vancouver's in Canada, so you need a passport to sail from Vancouver. But again, Vancouver is an awesome, awesome city. Same thing I'm gonna say about Seattle. The airport is not close to downtown. You want to stay in downtown. The cruise port is literally right there. There is a hotel that's built into the cruise port. If you don't want to deal with your luggage, you can spend a little bit more money and stay in that hotel, and they will deliver your luggage from your hotel room to the cruise ship. That's pretty cool. But there are lots of hotels in downtown Vancouver. They're a little pricier than staying outside of downtown, obviously, but you're paying for that convenience and the beauty of being right there on the water, seeing the cruise ships come and go if you go in a couple of days before or stay a couple of days after. And what Vancouver has that's really, really cool is, if you're flying home right after your cruise, you can walk out of the cruise terminal, take a left, walk down about 1.5 blocks, 2 blocks, and there's a train station right there. And for a very cheap, less than $5 train ticket, it'll take you directly to the airport. Done that before, that's very cool. It's a lot cheaper than taking an Uber or a taxi. It's a lot less hectic than taking a cruise line transfer. Take your luggage with you, and just pull it down to the train station, buy a train ticket, you're off. It's awesome. That's a very good positive about Vancouver. Okay, one other thing about these two cruise ports is flying in and out. You're gonna have different prices, but not too much. Now, if you're a Southwest person, Southwest is not flying to Vancouver. Just be aware of that. You can fly into Seattle, but not Vancouver. Other than that, pretty much every airline will fly into both. Flight prices are a little bit more in Vancouver, but not much. Don't let that make or break your trip if you're trying to decide which port to cruise from. Remember that con I said about Seattle and the one day in the open Pacific? You don't have that in Vancouver. Yeah, Vancouver is in an inlet, and when you come out of that inlet, you are between Vancouver Island and mainland Canada, and you are in protected waters pretty much all the way up to Alaska. So you're going to have a smoother sailing from Vancouver pretty much any time of year. Just kind of be aware of that. Like I said, don't let this make or break where you're choosing to cruise from, because both are excellent cruise ports. Just be aware that's my only real difference of the two. Now, how do you pick a cruise line? So like I said, if you are very familiar with a cruise line, you're like, I am an NCL girl and I'm platinum with NCL and I only want to sail NCL. They have great cruises to Alaska. If you're loyal to Royal and you want to sail Royal Caribbean to Alaska, they do great cruises to Alaska. Pretty much every cruise line does. Now, here's my little caveat. If you have never cruised to Alaska and you're like, well, I don't know who to cruise with. Who should I cruise with to Alaska? They're all great. My personal favorite is Holland America Line. Why? They invented Alaska cruising. Seriously, they invented it. 75 plus years ago, they were the first people to ever take ships up to Alaska. They've been doing it the longest, they know it, they specialize in it, and that's just kind of my jam when it comes to Alaska. Have I cruised other lines to Alaska? Absolutely. Did I like them? Absolutely. Just a little caveat there, if you've never cruised and you're looking for a specific cruise line, maybe give them a try. The second way to visit Alaska is going to be a land-only trip. Now, most people who are gonna do this are not gonna drive to Alaska, because like I said, you gotta go all the way through Canada to get up to Alaska. It's a very long drive. If you can do it, more power to you. On my bucket list to hopefully do one day, but let's talk realistic. Realistically, if you're going to do a land-only, you're gonna fly. More than likely, you're gonna fly to Anchorage. Anchorage is the biggest city, biggest airport, easiest to get flights in and out of. Flying into Anchorage is beautiful. Oh my God, when you come down from those clouds and you see the mountains surrounding Anchorage for the first time and you see the ocean off in the distance, it's breathtaking. To come into Alaska for the first time by air and look down and go, oh, that's Alaska. It's amazing. It's amazing. It really, really is. Definitely recommend doing this. If you're not a cruiser and you want to see Alaska, do this. Fly to Anchorage. There's so much you can do from there. So here's my I don't want to cruise but want to see Anchorage sample itinerary. Let's call it that. Fly to Anchorage, because that is a hub where you can go to many different points, okay? Do some cool stuff in Anchorage. It's a really neat city. But from there, you can drive 2 hours north to Hatcher's Pass. We did this on this last trip. Hatcher's Pass is gorgeous. It is the quintessential Alaska. You know, you're driving down a dirt road, you're curving through the mountains, there's snow on the ground, there's animals, there's frozen lakes in the middle of summer. It's just spectacular. On this last trip, me and Sophia did this and we stayed up there. There's actually a hotel on Hatcher's Pass and we stayed there and we did the ATV tour and then we explored on our own. And let me tell you, that ATV tour was one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. Definitely, if you're gonna do just a land tour in Alaska, try and book you a tour there and then just enjoy Hatcher's Pass. It's fantastic. It's 2 hours outside of Anchorage, but it's not like I'm driving this boring scenery to get somewhere. It's gorgeous, the entire drive there. And if you go do the ATV tour, they're gonna tell you to come in one way and they're gonna tell you to go out the other. So you're gonna make kind of a triangle through this area and you see so much. It's gorgeous, do it. Another great day trip from Anchorage is go down to Seward. So from Seward, you can access the Kenai Fjords National Park. Again, we did this on this trip. Fabulous. I have never seen so much wildlife in a day in my life. We saw 3 different types of whales. We saw sea lions, seals. I can't even remember everything we saw. We saw bald eagles. We saw puffins. We saw, it was just incredible. So much. And then the fjords are beautiful. So you're seeing the wildlife. You're going for the fjords and you're gonna see the wildlife. It's incredible. So definitely a great day trip. And then Seward's just a neat town. You can just walk around there. There's shops, there's restaurants all up and down the seashore right there. And Seward is where you're going to catch a ship if you're going north or south on some cruise lines. So there's 2 ports, I'll get into that in a minute, but Seward is one of those ports for the north and south trips. So you're in Anchorage, you had a day trip to Hatcher's Pass, you've had a day trip down to Seward, you've had a day just to spend in Anchorage because there's a lot of cool stuff to do there. And now, okay, what next? You're gonna catch the train on the Alaska Railway and you're gonna go up to Denali. Yes, you're gonna go to Denali National Park. Absolutely stunning national park. There is plenty of lodges you can stay in right outside the park. And what's great about this is the train station literally drops you off inside the national park. And then every lodge or hotel that's up there is gonna provide transportation. So you don't need a car here. They're gonna provide all the transportation you need. The tours are plentiful. No matter what you want to do, you're going to find it up here. You can do the trips through the national park, which is where they're going to take you on the narrated buses. We've done this. It's called the Tundra Wilderness Tour. And they take you all the way into like mile 43, I think it is, and where you can see a lot of wildlife. And that's where a road is collapsed, so you can't go any further than that right now. And there's hikes that you can do around Denali. We did that as well. And then if you're feeling really adventurous, you can go up and do a flight seeing tour. If we did it last year, the weather wasn't perfect. It was still absolutely gorgeous, but we couldn't see the peak of Denali because of all the cloud coverage. Like clouds were coming down to about 9,000 feet, so we couldn't see the beautiful 20,000+ feet of Denali. But this last time we were in the area, it was perfectly clear. So if we would have done a flight seeing that trip, it would have been just stunning. You can do whitewater rafting. There's just so much to do up there. Denali is a place you definitely want to go, spend 2 to 3 days, and you can do so much in that time. From there, keep going north to Fairbanks. And Fairbanks is where you're going to get a lot of gold rush history. It's a very cute, quaint little town. But from there, there's day trips as well. There's a really cool hot springs you can go to, natural hot springs up in Alaska. And this is something I would love to do in the winter, go to Fairbanks, because in the winter, you can go out and sit in these hot springs and be completely submerged in warm water and have the northern lights above you. I mean, to me, that sounds perfect, right? Okay, so that is an idea for an itinerary, and then you can fly home from Fairbanks. Idea of an itinerary for land only in Alaska. Keep in mind, this is the land of the midnight sun. And when they say the midnight sun, literally the sun doesn't set until about or after midnight, and then it rises at around 4 a.m. But the sky never gets dark. It is like dusk in those 4 hours. So if you go in the middle of the summer, especially near the solstice, you're not gonna have any darkness. So be prepared for that. It's kind of disorienting because you're like, oh my God, it's when am I supposed to sleep? It's not getting dark. You just have to tell yourself, look at your watch and go, okay, it's 10 p.m., it's 11 p.m., I need to go to sleep now, and bring an eye mask, because it doesn't matter how good the blackout curtains are, light's coming in. So be sure and bring an eye mask. And then my favorite way of seeing Alaska is what we just did, a land and sea combination. So how do I go about booking a land and sea combination? There's a couple ways you can do it. If you want to do what I just described in land, you can book that separate from a cruise if you want to. That's completely doable. Of course, you're not going to want to go all the way up to Fairbanks if you're going to have to come all the way back down for a cruise. I'd probably go up to Denali and come back down from there. But the best way to do this is booking a cruise tour through the cruise line. So, and when you do this, they kind of take care of everything for you. They're going to have the, the pre-arrival hotel as part of your package. They'll take care of your luggage, getting it from the hotel to the train, and the train to your room at the lodge, and then transport it down to the ship. They take care of everything, so that is fantastic. Now, what we did on this trip that me and Sophia just took is we did a 10-day Cruisetour with Holland America, and then we added a couple more days on the front end. So coming in early, we did Hatcher's Pass on our own, we did Kenai Fjords on our own, but then once we started the Denali portion, all of that was part of the cruise tour. And we just coordinated it to where we stayed in the same hotel the whole time. So whenever I was talking to Holland America, I said, okay, great. What hotel are we staying at? Because there's a couple that they use. And they told me the hotel. I said, okay, please add an additional night to my package. That way I don't have to move hotels. So that was so easy to do. They just added that additional night and I never had to move hotels. Went up to Hatcher's Pass, spent the night there, and then came down, checked into the hotel that was part of my package, and I was good to go. From that point on, easy peasy, they took care of my luggage, they took care of transportation and everything. So this was probably my favorite trip to Alaska because we did so much. We were there about 13 days. Well, if you watch the Vancouver video, the trip ended up staying a little longer than we anticipated, but I think that this trip specifically hit so many areas. We got to see Anchorage, we got to do the day trips from Anchorage, we got nights in Denali, and then we got our 7-day cruise. And going north or south, you get to see even more of Alaska. We got an additional day in the glaciers, and we got to go see Hubbard Glacier, which is north of where you're going to go for a 7-day round trip cruise. So going to see the largest glacier in North America was pretty darn cool. And so we had 2 days, just relaxing sea days, where we had one in Hubbard Glacier and then the second in Glacier Bay. After having all of those days on land, having those couple of days at sea were so perfect before we started hitting ports. So I think this itinerary was absolutely perfect. Okay, so the benefits of booking a cruise tour. Like I said, everything's included. Your lodge is included, your train ticket is included, all your transportation to and from the port is included, and then of course your cruise. So in doing this, you're gonna choose, what you're mainly gonna choose is north or south first. So the cruise portion is gonna be first, or the cruise portion is going to be last. In our trip, we decided to do land first and sea second. You can always start in either Seattle or Vancouver, travel north, and then do the land portion. It's really up to you. And some people will ask, well, which is better? There is no better. It's really a matter of what you want to do. Both of the trips that we've done cruise tours, we did land first, then sea. I could totally see doing the sea first, then land. It's a personal preference. There are 2 cruise lines that own their own lodges, and that's Holland America Line and Princess Cruises. And they're right next to each other. And because they're sister companies, they work in conjunction. There's actually even a trolley that'll take you, from one to the other. You can, if you're staying at the McKinley Lodge, you can go eat at the Princess Lodge if you want. You can shop, you can do anything you want between the 2 lodges. If you want to stay at these lodges, you have to book a cruise tour. It's not like you can just go on Expedia and book Princess Lodges. It doesn't work that way. Those are exclusively for the cruise lines. Now, if you want to do the land portion, like we said earlier, there are other places you can stay. When my sister went, she stayed in the Crow's Nest Cabins, which is in the same vicinity of these, and she actually went over to Princess and ate as well. So the restaurants are available for anyone. You don't have to be staying at those resorts. Now, if you're going with another one of the cruise lines, Norwegian, Royal Caribbean, or Celebrity, and I'm sure there's some others that do the one-way trips, there are a different set of lodges that they share. So they don't have their own specific lodges. So if you're booking with one of those, they're very nice. I've seen them before, I haven't stayed at them, but you're gonna get a very good lodge experience. It's just gonna be in a different part of Denali. Let's talk about the train for a second. That's gorgeous. The train ride is gorgeous. Again, these same 2 cruise lines, Holland America and Princess, that own their own lodges, also own their own train cars. That's pretty cool. So they are very clearly marked as their train cars. And what's neat about these is that they're 2-story train cars. So you're sitting upstairs in a glass domed train cars where you can see out all around you. And this is your spot. You're gonna have an assigned seat, you're gonna sit there, you're gonna chill, but you can get up and wander anywhere you want. And when it's mealtime, breakfast and or lunch, you go downstairs to the dining car and they serve meals right there. Now, the meals are not included. You can buy a meal plan if you want, but the meals on the train are just a la carte. You just pay for them as you go. And there's also snacks that are served upstairs, and again, that's pay as you go. But they're not really expensive. It's just like going to any other restaurant and buying food, you know, so they're not exorbitant prices. But the food's really neat too, because they'll have items that you're not used to. So we had reindeer chili and a bison sandwich. I mean, where else are you gonna get that other than Alaska? I thought that was pretty cool. So getting this land and sea, you're getting so much more than just a cruise, because you're getting that Denali experience. You're getting that train experience. And then you're getting the beauty of the 7-day cruise. So that's my personal preference. That's what I would say if you've got the time. So let's talk about time factors. Again, a lot of people can only take 7 days off of work at a time for a vacation. Totally understand that. If that's all the time you have, do the 7-day cruise. It's amazing. That's how we started seeing Alaska. Our first several trips to Alaska were on the 7-day round trip cruises, and we absolutely love them. You're not gonna lose anything by just doing the 7-day cruise. It's fabulous. Absolutely, if that's all you have is 7 days, do it. Same thing with the land. If all you have is 7 days and you wanna see it per land, fly up to Anchorage, do the 7 days there, and then fly back home. But if you've got more time, do the land and sea combo, definitely. I would say if you can do, ours was a official 10-day, we added some more time to that. So say if you've got 2 weeks that you can spend in Alaska, think about all you could see. Think about all you could do in 2 weeks up there. Can you tell I like Alaska? It's literally my favorite place in the world. If you're interested in booking any of these trips, I am a travel agent and I'd be happy to help you. I do specialize in cruises and specialize in Alaska because it's my favorite place in the world. So I'm more than happy to help you, and here's my email address and I'd love to hear from you. Of course, you can book all of these direct with the cruise lines if you like, but if you'd like a little extra help or someone who's been there before to help you out, shoot me an email and I'm happy to help. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And we will see you next time, hopefully on a cruise. Bye.